Fernando Valley. I drove down the same street 11 years of my life, Plummer Street, through middle school all the way to undergraduate. I went to James Monroe High School, which is located in the heart of the valley, also kind of known to be in the poor areas of the San Fernando Valley. I went to James Monroe High School, and at my high school, we had something that I noticed now as an adult isn't really normal in other schools after talking to Margaret and Isabel. Something that was really normal all the time at my school was seeing a pregnant girl. And that was one of the bigger issues at my school. Looking back and thinking about the sex education we had, most of it focused on how not to get pregnant or don't have sex. Thinking back at this, now that I'm in PA school, I realize, what about all the STI education? And this is such a high rate in this population. And that's when we realized, wow, how many cases went unknown at that time?
When I was in high school, my sex education consisted of a 10-minute video in my state required course. In SRC, there was more of a focus on driving than there was on health and sex education. These 10 minutes with no instruction from my teacher were all that I got. It scares me that this cheesy video was all that was provided in several schools across the state. It also scares me that so many teenagers went out and explored their sexuality equipped with only this video.
We found out in the past 5 years the SRC course that Margaret was just talking about is no longer offered, and now high school students are left with no sex education at all.
I remember a time in clinic when there was a 13-year-old boy who came in, and he was really, really happy to find out that his HIV results were negative. After seeing how relieved he looked, I thought I'd go a little further in and talk to him. Turns out he'd had 7 sexual partners, rarely used condoms, and didn't know anything about his partner's sexual history, let alone even their names of some of these people. So I realized he needed a lot more education than I thought just walking into the room. Him and I sat there for probably about 30 minutes, and he went in, and this just seemed like a natural thing between him and his friends, and that everybody was doing it. A party was looking at a place to hook up. It wasn't anything else. So I decided that this group was somebody that we really needed to target in, and we decided to stick with the teenagers and really start with them and let them spread the message to their friends.
So it was clear to us that high school students need early STI and HIV prevention and awareness education in order to decrease the risk or the prevalence of some of the most common STIs. So our group set out to help fill the gaps that the education system had left behind. We also wanted to focus on removing the stigma that often follows talking about STIs and STDs and empower the students to have these conversations with their peers and the people who will eventually become their sexual partners. We also wanted to show them that they shouldn't feel shameful for seeking advice from a medical professional, and that there's a lot of resources out there for them if they have questions or need help. So we knew that talking to high school students would be more challenging than talking to your average patient. So in putting together our presentation for them, we were very careful to choose words and medical phrases that were not only medically appropriate, but also very easy to understand.
So at the beginning of our presentation, Ms. Babayans, our partner in presentation, asked me to kind of talk to the class, introduce myself, and just kind of talk about my journey from where at James Monroe High School to PA school now. In that conversation, I let the kids know, hey, I grew up in the valley where you are. I still live here. I grew up in a single parent home just like you guys did. I faced some of the same challenges you guys have, so it's totally possible. In opening our presentation with this, it really helped us connect with the kids. I feel like they felt, instead of saying oh, these girls don't know, they're just coming in kind of just preaching to us, and they don't know what we're going through. It was more like, hey guys, I know what you're going through, I grew up, and that just kind of made us, that made them trust us more and just gave us that connection with them. In addition to that, we also try to use advocacy with their local resources there. And because we came in, Ms. Babayans also introduced us as PA students, a lot of these kids were like, what is that? So that also gave us an opportunity to really tell them what a PA was, what we did, and who we were. So in the future, when they do go seek any STI prevention, help, screening, medical attention, they'll feel comfortable and be like, oh, I know what a PA is, cool. Yeah, those are the girls that came in and talked to us.
So next we did our needs assessment and spoke to the local high school students around the area of James Monroe High School. A lot of them we started with just basic, do you know any names of STIs, or do you even know how to put on a condom? A lot of these kids really had no idea. They had to use a group of friends to be like, oh, I know an STI, do you know one? Because that's all I got. So we could tell that even though they've had previous sex education, it definitely wasn't enough. They were needing groups of friends to figure out and fill in the blanks, and you don't usually have that in difficult situations. So we just wanted to make sure that they were getting the correct information, and we realized that they weren't getting enough.
They have a clinic on campus, but Ms. Babayan said their STI education was inaccurate and they didn't use appropriate terms instead of scientific terminology. They've had other outside groups come in to present to their class, but they weren't as effective in delivering their information.
According to the CDC, even though teenagers are only 1/4 of the population that is sexually active, they make up over 50% of new cases of STIs each year. That's 20 million cases, and that's just among teenagers.
Another study completed just last year showed that although the rates of condom use and abstinence among the U.S. adolescent population are increasing, the rates of STIs in this population still remain very high. So this study also found that brief individualized counseling provided to adolescents who've been diagnosed with an STI significantly decreased the rate of STI infection 1 year later.
According to Healthy People 2020, in SPA 2, the San Fernando Valley, there's been a steady increase of chlamydia infection among teenagers since 2007. The SPA data shows that as a SPA, the STI numbers are not indicative of an area of need. However, we chose this SPA because Ms. Babayan's leading former health education teacher was laid off after 12 years of teaching health education, so we knew that the school needed its sex education. Ms. B sees how the public system's education, devaluing of sex education has negatively impacted her students. Students are less likely to have the right tools to protect themselves against STIs without a strong knowledge base.
1 week prior to our intervention, we passed out to the students pre-test. One of the questions included questions that they had for us or any information that they wanted to learn more about. Some of the common questions that we read were, is there a cure for STIs? How do you get STIs? What are some of the symptoms of STIs? How do you get tested for STIs? And how do I prevent them? Knowing these questions gave us a better idea of their prior sex education knowledge and also some of the areas that they wanted to learn more information about.
Given that our
During our presentation, we spoke about a multitude of things, but my section was about sexual health myths. So I went and researched a lot of the myths that are online saying, this is what our teens are sharing with each other. So we brought up certain things like, can STIs be spread in a hot tub? Or is it better to use 2 condoms instead of just 1? These were things that kids were actually sharing with each other. So we thought by bringing this up, let's dispel the myths and get them to actually be sharing the correct information with their peers. Another thing we brought up, which we've learned in PA school ourselves, was correct condom use, and that starts with things like expiration date, integrity of the wrapper, things like that. So we went through a checklist with the kids and just, this is what you should do to make sure that a condom is actually a good condom before you use it, to make sure that it's as effective as possible.
Given that our needs assessment showed that our population still had several questions about STIs, we started our presentation off with a quick recap of common STIs and symptoms. During this time, we showed them the requisite disgusting pictures, but we started off with a series of completely normal-looking pictures to drive home the message that the most common symptom of all STIs is that they're completely asymptomatic. This was a point that was very surprising to most of our class.
We discussed proper condom fit and modeled step-by-step how to use a condom properly, and then the students practiced on their own and taught each other using a checklist that's on the board, and then we monitored each group and walked around.
So during our needs assessment, we learned that most of the students knew the basics of STIs, but a lot of them wanted more information about how to prevent them. So knowing this information, we put an emphasis on prevention during our presentation. We went through when they should get tested and also how often. And then we also talked about how to get tested and when they did go get tested, what it actually consisted of, such as a physical exam, blood work, urine sample, and also a culture swab. And then we also touched upon the HPV vaccine, Gardasil. We talked about what it is, who can receive it, and what it protects against.
We also did a hypothetical scenario with the students during which two teenagers are about to have sex and don't have a condom. And then we gave the students a list of potential outcomes and asked them to get together in small groups and discuss the positives and negatives of each outcome. And this activity was really valuable because it not only gave them the opportunity to put into practice the skills that they had just learned, but it also gave them an idea of what they would do if they ever found themselves in that same situation.
So we gave them all this information, but at the same time, we also gave them the resources. Of course, they had the North Hills Wellness Center on campus, which they can go visit. We also gave them the local Planned Parenthood at Van Nuys, so they can go as well. We also talked about Family Pack, because a lot of the kids, they don't know, well, I show up and then what? How do I pay for it? So this is a good option for all the kids that don't work, so they all qualify for free STD testing and protection. We also emphasize the fact that you don't need your parents to go and get STD testing. A lot of them didn't know that. They all thought like, well, I don't want my parents to find out. It's like, you don't need them. You can go, and everything you talk to your doctor about, you will, it's confidential. The kids are like, really? So you'll get in trouble? Yeah, we'll get in trouble. So don't worry, it's all confidential. And they felt really relieved about that.
One of the reasons why our intervention was different was the condom demonstration. During our presentation, we asked the students how many of them have ever seen a condom demonstration, and only 2 out of the 37 raised their hand. And we actually went a step above, and we actually gave them time to apply their knowledge and practice and teach each other. Being interactive after they just learned about how to correctly apply a condom, we think greatly enhanced their knowledge.
So in most sexual education classes, unfortunately, abstinence is usually taught as the only option. So we wanted to go and just say, if you are having sex, here's how to be safe.
Our intervention was effective because we created a safe space and helped the students be more comfortable talking about sex. We also taught them the negotiation skills that are required when it comes to talking about things like condom use and STI testing. And we also provided them opportunities to ask anonymous questions before, during, and after the intervention so that they wouldn't feel embarrassed or judged.
We actually made quite an impact and exceeded our objectives. Prior to our intervention, only 47% of students knew where to get STI testing, and afterwards 100% knew. There was an increase in correctly identifying the age group at highest risk for STI infections, and more students felt comfortable talking to a potential sex partner about using a condom, went from neutral to agree, and more students felt comfortable talking to a potential partner about getting STI testing, that went from neutral to agree, and then the likelihood of the students getting STI testing went from undecided to likely.
So throughout this whole process, we learned that high school students have a lot of questions regarding sexual health, regardless if they've had sex ed in the past. And we also learned that there are a lot of gaps in their current knowledge base. So as we mentioned earlier, a lot of people did not know some of the symptoms of the most common STIs. Some people thought that STI and HIV were interchangeable terms, and some didn't know if and how any STIs could be treated or cured.
We really like the fact that we ended up getting a lot of positive feedback verbally from the kids as well as post-test, and they really acknowledged how important and interested they were in the subject.
We wish overall we would have had more time to just kind of delve into the questions we did get and be able to brush upon more topics. However, had we had more time, we definitely would have done that, as well as probably compare a different spa and see, is this happening everywhere?
In just 1 hour, we used 6 PA students. We're able to make such a big difference. Just imagine all the positive changes that can be made when our entire class goes out into real practice. Going in, we thought that if we even prevented 1 kid from getting an STI, that it would be all worth it. But we walked away knowing that we had made a much bigger impact than we had anticipated. We empowered our students by building their confidence and providing them with the skills to navigate this sensitive topic. If there are any gaps in current health education, we as PAs can fill in those gaps.
In practice, we encourage you to create a safe space among your teenage patients And don't assume that they won't have any questions or that they will come with questions to you. It may seem difficult to create a safe space and talk to teenagers, but it's important to remember to be open-minded, non-judgmental, and know that many times you may be the only person that the teen can talk to about these issues. So open the door and always remind them that you are there to answer all their questions confidentially.
So we challenge you to make a difference in the communities, whether where you grew up or where you work, and do it.